Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court and other court issues. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, and today I've got a very special guest. Her name is Mary Summer, and she has written a book called Lethal Love. This is a compelling story about a young girl who endured a life of hardship growing up in a dysfunctional environment. Desperate to escape her tumultuous childhood, this 15-year-old girl fell into a trap of true love only to reach the hands of a narcissistic sociopath. We're going to talk a lot about that. The assailant was disguised as her soulmate, which left the young woman to face over 25 years of abuse, becoming a victim of domestic violence for years, only later to discover the development of severe Stockholm syndrome and a trauma bond to her abuser. What seemed like a picturesque marriage was hidden secret from friends and family. And this happens a lot. The abuse escalated late into the marriage when her husband began to brainwash his young teenage daughters to help with his task of destroying her mentally and emotionally, financially as well, which led to losing custody of her children. Still, years after the divorce, her children are brainwashed and still dealing with the severe effects of parental alienation and a heartbroken mother fighting the legal system only to get nowhere. This story will give you a straight insight into how ignoring the red flags can quickly turn into a toxic relationship with no escape. The signs should have never have been ignored, and the difficulties when dealing with someone who displays a toxic personality disorder before it spirals into severe abuse, trauma, and the loss of everything that once belonged to you. And what happened to Mary can happen to anyone. So welcome to the show, Mary. You've written a wonderful book.
Thank you. Thank you.
How long did it take you to write this?
I think it took me about, I would say just over 2 years.
Mhm.
There was a lot more text and I just took a lot of stuff out and tried to narrow it down because there was more stuff that happened, but I really wanted to keep it so that it wasn't, too long, but the key points of how the abuse starts in the beginning and how, I hear this a lot, people just ignore these red flags and all right, so he beat me, I'll just forgive him because he bought me a diamond ring, or I'll forgive him and forgive him and forgive him until it becomes you're almost ending your life because you stay too long, because
Right.
it will end up badly if you and there were certainly a lot of red flags, but I was very young. He was my first boyfriend, my first love, and of course he gave me all the things I never got as a child with my parents. I wasn't, there was not a whole lot of affection and love in my family. I came from a big family. There was 5 kids, so I was often ignored. I was abused as well, and so that didn't help me. But what he offered me seemed a lot better than what I was dealing with in my home life, but it ended up becoming just another version of abuse.
Mhm.
And then I became very codependent and on him because he was my husband, and then you had children, and then and he was definitely more manipulative and charming, and he would do bad things and then he would turn around and just tell me how much he loved me and he's sorry, but it never ended. And in the end, it really shows that he's very, very sick.
Mhm.
um, and the sad part is that these sick people blend into society and they seem very normal. And people would say, oh, I would never believe that your husband would do something like that to you. So, and that's part of their game, is that they want you to look like you're crazy.
Mhm.
So they go above and beyond to be this perfect image of this amazing human being in public. And there are different kind of strengths, I guess you want to call it, of narcissism. There's some that aren't so calculated. My ex-husband was a covert narcissist, and I believe
Mhm.
he's also a psychopath. I think you will be able to make that determination when you read about what he did in the end to me, because other than murder me, he has done absolutely everything to me. The murder part came in, but he was using my children to try to kill me or
Mhm.
push me over the edge so his hands would remain clean.
Mhm.
But he's a very calculated person, and a lot of them are, and they have a lot of power a lot of times. And well, most of the time they're very powerful and they have a lot of money, and they debilitate their victims so that we can't fight back. And that's what happened to me.
When did this all start falling apart for you in the marriage? When did it all, did you start recognizing the signs?
Well, okay, so I was beaten by him even before I married him, and I still married him. I was
Mm,
beaten severely during my first pregnancy, literally for 9 months straight. Like almost, like at one point I thought my baby was dead.
mhm,
Okay, and my firstborn. So, and then over the years, then so he stopped beating me, and then it was just isolation, manipulation, not letting me have friends. But once I had children, he was constantly undermining me.
mhm,
You know, just he was assuming my role as a mother. He wouldn't let me near my children. He was constantly taking me out, hiring babysitters so I wouldn't bond with my children. I see all the patterns now, and writing the book actually showed me that the patterns, these are the patterns, and as subtle as they are, they're very severe. So anyhow, but the worst part of it, if you can imagine, more than getting beaten when you're pregnant, was in the end when he began to have an affair with an employee of ours in our business. So we always kind of struggled financially. We got married really, really young. So now we open a business and we're making a ton of money. Like we've never seen.
I can't, I can't hear you.
Hang on.
Oh, I
Hang on.
hear you now. I hear you
Okay,
now.
okay, you got me now. Okay, it must have been something just the connect. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Where did I leave off?
About the business.
Okay,
Yeah,
so we had this business, and all of a sudden we are making like this exorbitant amount of money. Like it was so much money we'd never seen before in our lives. And they say that when you're whatever you are without anything, it becomes amplified. So if you're a bad person without money, you're a horrific person with money. And that's what I experienced with him. So he started to have an affair with an employee of ours. She
mhm,
was a young girl, about in her early 20s. She was a heroin junkie. This girl had track marks. I had just had my son, my third child, and our lives seemed perfect. But he starts to have an affair with an employee, and I worked in our family business as well. Um, so eventually, he starts to tell me to stay home. You don't have to work so much. Now, normally I'm being like, literally, I was treated like a slave my whole marriage. Like he literally had me doing everything. Now he's telling me to stay home because he thinks I do too much. So I thought,
mhm,
okay, that's really sweet. I thought that was great. So then I started to kind of get suspicious because people were starting to tell me that they would go into our business. We had a hair salon. I didn't say a hair salon in the book, but anyway, so they would go in, mutual friends of ours. And what happened is that they would see that this girl was showing up like with like see-through clothes on, no underwear. And they were telling me, you got to get rid of this person because she's like bending over and she has no underwear on in front of your husband. So,
mhm,
then I would ask my husband questions, and I would say, is something going on between you and Hannah, is her name in the book? And he would grab me and like, are you crazy? Are you out of your mind? Like he'd literally have tears in his eyes, tell me, you're the mother of my children. How could you
mhm,
say this to me? So
mhm,
naturally I walk away feeling, like, what's wrong with you? Like, snap out of this. Well, it kept happening. So now I'm getting more suspicious, and when I'm calling him, my daughter is with him.
mhm,
So what happened is that he started to take my daughters with him on all his dates. My daughter was 13 at the time, okay? So my daughter's now being exposed to a heroin junkie. She's drinking alcohol underage. He got both of my daughters. That one was 17 at the time and one was 13 at the time. And he had them going into bars, drinking underage, staying out all night. They were like he wouldn't even like, he pretended he was taking them to school and he wouldn't take them to school. You know, he was acting like this great father, and I want to help you because I had a little baby. My youngest was really young, 4 years old. So he's like, here, let me just take over the two girls and drive them to school and do this. Meanwhile, they weren't going to school. They were hanging around with a junkie. At one point, he actually rented a hotel room for my daughter, who was 13 at the time, and let her have sex with a boy she was seeing, left her in a New York City hotel room for 5 days while he occupied another room in the hotel, and he ran around with his junkie girlfriend. So now my daughter loses her virginity. And at this point, we were already separated. And okay, so then like separated in the home. All right. So I was told by the attorneys that I'm not supposed to leave the house because I'm going to lose all rights. Naturally, now I'm hysterical. I'm breaking down. I'm falling apart. I find out all this stuff, and I'm literally not even getting out of bed. So now he needs to get rid of me because he met even another girl who would be a good replacement for me, but he still has the junkie. So now he has my children, like I'm not getting out of bed, and he has my two daughters coming in my room. He stands in the middle and almost pats them on the back, and he has them spitting on me. And I'm not kidding you, this happened almost every day. Spitting in my face, calling me a whore, a slut. You deserve the affair. Literally the three of them screaming at me. You're a fucking whore. You're a fucking slut. You deserve the affair, and spitting on my face.
How terrible. I
Okay?
am so sorry.
Yeah.
Wow.
So my son, who was with me at the time, he was a baby. He literally never left my side. That is the most heartbreaking thing because he's estranged from me today. But anyway, my son, who was just really little, stayed with me in the bed. And for days, there was times I don't even know. I never got out of bed for days. So anyway, this one day when they were spitting on me, like constantly, like they wouldn't stop. And I kept putting my hands over my head and screaming, stop spitting on me. My little baby, 4 years old, got out of the bed, grabbed all of them and pushed them out of the room and slammed the door and came back into bed with me. So then my ex-husband started telling me that he was going to get a job working at night. So I said, okay. And I didn't care at this point because the chaos was killing me. So when he was going out at night, this is when he found the new girl, the new replacement for me. So now he's coming home at night, and I'm still sleeping with my baby. Now he's raping me in front of my son. So yeah, so this was the second part of his abuse to get me to, kill myself, basically. So now he started to rape me in front of my son, and I would tell him, obviously to get off of me, and I didn't want my son to wake up. And he'd say to me that if you don't come in the bathroom right now, I'm going to do it right here in front of the kid. So I would go into the bathroom, and my son would follow us, and he'd literally start screaming, I'm not kidding you, stop scooching my mom. Stop scooching my mom. Please, daddy, leave my mommy alone. Stop scooching her. Daddy, put your sticky away. Like he knew what was going on. And he'd literally be banging on the door like bloody murder. And I'm listening to this while I'm being raped. And I was being so severely sexually abused that I couldn't even get up. It was not one time. I don't know what he was on. But let me tell you something, there was times that he was doing this for a long time where I couldn't even stand up. It was so painful. And another time I was feeding my son breakfast, and again, he came downstairs and his penis was coming right out of his pants. And my son said, put your sticky away, daddy. And he looked at me and he said, well, if you don't want me to do this to you right in front of him, you better get in the bathroom. So I literally had to go to the bathroom again and again. My son was like screaming and yelling, like, stop scooching my mom, like crying, like, screaming. So, and I'm listening to this. So that's the other abuse that he did. Then he started to have my children call the police on me for no reason. They were calling me, and I'd have the cops show up at my house constantly saying, we just got a frantic phone call from your child that you're trying to kill them. You have a knife, you have this, you have that. I said, I don't have anything. I said, I'm going through a divorce. I'm crying. Can I cry? Like they just kept coming. I think it was about 13 times that he called the police on me. And one day, So one day he would also, what he would do, then he started to tape record me, and he started to come in the kitchen. I'd be making breakfast and he'd come in my ear and he'd whisper things that he was doing with this junkie, and like sexual things. And of course, I just wanted him to stop. So I'd start screaming, and then he'd flick his tape recorder on, and he'd start to tape record me when I'm screaming, leave me alone. But he didn't tape record what he did to get me to scream at him to go away. And I remember one time we had a dog, and I threw a bag of dog food at him, and I grabbed him by the shirt and I said, you need to leave me alone. And he had, like, I'm not kidding you, 2 superficial scratches. Well, he went to go see the judge in town, and made my daughter testify that I was abusing him and I was going after him with knives and bottles, like all kinds of stuff. Like, okay. And then another time, the spitting didn't stop. So there was constant spitting when, sometimes I'd take my youngest to school, and then I'd come back and the 3 of them would just pounce on me. And I remember one time they were all screaming and spitting at me, and I was trying to get away from them, and I fell up the stairs. And one of my daughters started screaming and said, stop, leave her alone. Like, she just like had a moment of something, but it just continued. So anyway, it was our wedding anniversary. It was like May 2nd, 2010. And while all this was going on, then he'd show up and he'd say, oh, I want to take us out for our anniversary, just to kind of throw me off. And at this point, I wasn't getting out of bed. I was having suicidal thoughts. And this was the last glimmer of hope that I thought maybe things could get better, was that he offered me to take me out for our wedding anniversary, our 23rd wedding anniversary. So I got out of bed and I said, are you taking me out? And I started to scream at him, like, why are you doing this to me? And I'm like looking for relief from him. Like, this is the thing, like, we look for relief from the monsters that put us in state. And I started to scream, like, why are you doing this to me? You promised me you were going to take me out. And he just, anyway, they started screaming at me again. Anyway, and that I tried to hang myself. I took a belt and I attempted suicide. But what he did was he had my daughter. He called my daughter right away and he said, get in here. You have to call the cops now. So this is how I lost all rights to everything. So while I was trying to hang myself, my daughter walked in and she literally collapsed on the floor. And I let go of the belt, and all he did was he took a cordless phone and shoved it in her face and said, you have to call the cops now. You have to call now. You call the cops on your mother now. Those were his exact words. And my daughter is literally on the floor screaming and sobbing. And he is making her make the phone call to the police. I fled the house. I left my house. I had no shoes on. My neck was all like, you could see that I tried to hang myself. So my neck was completely like bruised and stuff. But I went over to a friend's house. Now the police are looking for me. I'm like a fugitive. Like, I was like somebody who committed a crime. I never did anything in my life. I never did anything in my life. So I guess they completely called the police. They created this whole narrative about what that I'm crazy, I'm psychotic. So I end up in a mental institute because I was with my friends. I didn't want them to get in trouble. So I said, and all my friends are calling me. They're like, what's going on? The police are coming to all the people looking for you. What's going on? So I turned myself in. And of course, when the police got there, they saw my neck, and that was proof enough that I attempted suicide. So I was left in a facility, a mental health facility, for 10 days. And what happened was, when I was in there, the hospital tried to reach out to my ex-husband to bring me some clothes. There was nothing at all. He wouldn't respond to anything. And then the last couple of days I was there, I had a police officer come in and said, you can't leave this facility unless you sign the restraining order. You can't go home. So I had to sign a restraining order, and I had to, then Children's Services came in and also told me that I can't be 150 feet of my children. And that weekend he moved in his new girlfriend. So I was basically left homeless. I lost all rights to the bank accounts. I lost, this is how they set you up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I reported in the hospital that I was being raped, I was being spit on, and nobody told me to file that, to pursue that is against the law. I had no idea that being spit on was a criminal offense and being raped by your husband is a criminal offense. Nobody advised me of these things. I'm in a hospital and nobody is saying to me, there, you have rights. You should not be raped. You should not be raped in front of your children. You should not be spit on. But nobody told me that this was something you cannot do and it's against the law. And I only learned it was against the law a few years ago. I had no idea. So anyway, I so I'm homeless now. I have only my car. A friend of mine let me live with her. And then it just escalated from there. So now he moved in his girlfriend, and I cannot go near my children. I endured a year and a half of supervised visits with my youngest. My middle daughter wanted nothing to do with me. She was 14. Why would she? She can have sex. She can smoke, drink, do drugs. She had, what 14-year-old isn't going to want that grand life? No rules. To them, it's paradise, It's like the land of plenty. You can do whatever you want and you're not going to get in trouble. Just hate your mother. Those are the only parameters you have. You can do whatever you want, just as long as you hate your mother and you do as I say. Okay? It's the deal with the devil. And my son would call me screaming. I don't even know how he would get my phone number, crying, screaming, bloody murder. When we had visitation, almost jumping out of a car one time. I'd be running after him barefoot on the street. It was horrific. It was horrific. And he did not care. My ex-husband did not care. He wanted control and he was going to get it no matter what it took, even if it was destroying our children. My son ended up with encropices where he wouldn't, he wasn't going to the bathroom anymore. He was holding it, which is a true form of trauma. He started to sleep with a knife. I sent DYFUS there. They found the knife in my son's bed. They did nothing about it. Nobody cared. Nobody cared. The system is broken. Okay?
It is broken. It really is
broken. The fact that a little 4 or 5-year-old is sleeping with a freaking knife. Are you kidding me? And then there was babysitters after babysitters reporting that there was no food in the house, that the house was filthy. And he would go on these binges and leaving the children alone constantly. He was never home. My kids would even reported at one point that he'd be gone for days, and then he'd expect them to go pick them up when he drunk. But he would be gone for days and there was no food in the house. So he did a lot of things and nobody cared. But anyway, I had to get a forensic to regain my visitation. So I only had I think it was 6 hours a week of supervised visits. I'm the primary caregiver, and now I have 6 hours. And he's got his girlfriend living there. And then he's got the junkie coming in the basement downstairs. She's downstairs having sex with him. Then he goes upstairs in the master bedroom and sleeping with the new girlfriend. And then he makes my middle daughter sleep with the junkie downstairs in the bed after he had sex with her. And my daughter reported this to a mobile response therapist who did nothing, zero. She should be in jail too.
I agree.
Okay. And I know who she is. And let me tell you something. She should be in jail. She was the catalyst because they had convinced her while we were going through a divorce that I was a mentally unstable person when I wasn't home. She only met me one time and she wrote a letter to the court. Nasty woman. Anyway, just unqualified. You don't make those type of decisions. But anyway, so it was reported after, and she could actually clearly see that my children were not safe, that he's still having sex with this junkie in the basement. Now my daughter's sleeping with her after your father has sex with a girl. Now they're sleeping together in the basement, and she had to stay watch at the door to make sure that the new girlfriend didn't come downstairs. So I'm sure my daughter heard them having sex, and now she has to sleep with them. Are you kidding me? So fast forward, anyway, I get the overnights back. But
Mm-hmm.
and the forensic psychologist is aware of the rapes, the beatings, the sexual abuse, the estrangement, everything that spells that this guy is a psychotic person.
Mm-hmm.
But he remains the residential parent. He remains which means nothing. To a narcissist, he still has the ultimate control.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened is that I was given these overnights after a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
1 year and a half, I'm giving overnights, and my son is now back with me, and he's already, I could see the I could see that he's already starting to change and not want to
Oh.
get close to me. Um, so anyhow, my other daughter, the middle daughter who was put through all that, did end up becoming a heroin addict.
Oh no.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
She was a heroin addict and she almost died. She was 3 minutes away from death. And today, ironically, she is the only daughter I have in my life.
Hmm.
She did, and I feel like because she was a heroin addict, that she actually got a lot of intervention, and that's actually what healed her. Because I feel like when she was in and out of rehabs 3 times. Now he also stopped me from trying to get her help several times
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like he knows if she gets healthy, she could be a detrimental to him and
Mm-hmm.
story. We don't talk about it today because my relationship with her is still, it is close, but I know that there's still I'm very careful what I say to her. She does recognize that he's not a good person. She does live away from where we are now, so she lives like in California, and she married a nice guy, and she has a really nice husband who sees that he's a little bit of, who sees that he's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that those things are contributing factors to her healing as well. Um, so my eldest daughter did marry somebody just like her father, and she is estranged from my life. And I actually don't think I'll ever see her again
Mm-hmm.
because she has been isolated, and she is with somebody who is a narcissistic sociopath as well. And she's keeping her father in her life again, which she didn't speak to him for 6 years, and now he's back in her life. And my youngest comes in and out at times, but he's now completely brainwashed.
Mm-hmm.
The one who witnessed all the things, who was very close to me, he is completely, like, tomorrow's his birthday, and it's very heartbreaking. It's
It is, and it's very also heartbreaking how fast this brainwashing can happen.
oh yeah,
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes it's insidious and it takes a while, but sometimes it can happen over the weekend
yeah.
to some parents.
Well, the thing is with brainwashing is I don't think it just happens during a high conflict divorce. I think it escalates, but when you read the book, you're going to be able to see that the brainwashing was happening all along. There,
Mhm.
there's a lot of like somebody who is constantly undermining you when you're trying to
Mhm.
children right from wrong. That is brainwashing. Anybody that goes against another, whether you think it's right or wrong, if you put a rule in place and you deliberately break that rule as a parent, that's brainwashing.
Mhm.
There's brainwashing isn't just you know the whole method of it, it's also the behavior of everyday life. Like,
Mhm.
my kids would do terrible things to me and they were rewarded.
Mhm.
They were allowed to break the rules, but he would do it in a way where it was so subtle. It was like little things here and there, but yet he acted like this great father, that he was just a father that loved his children, and he just had a soft spot for them. You know what I'm saying?
That's what they do. They have them so brainwashed to and that's a crime, really. It's a
It
crime,
is.
and like we had talked earlier, this is what they do in cults to get people to
They,
stay.
they do. And when it's a parent, it's even worse because you never believe that your parents, they just viewed him as the fun dad, the fun, oh, mom, you're just too strict with us, and dad's just the cool dad, and dad is fun. But it's not, because their lives, they don't understand like this. Like, I mean, my daughter went through horrible years of heroin abuse, And my other daughter is in an abusive marriage and she doesn't even see it. I
Mhm.
mean, I know she's being abused because anybody that would keep your mother away from you, who's done nothing but love you and help you, I'm sorry, that's abuse.
Mhm.
But they do it with a smile on their face, and they do it very calculated, and they're very careful. And this is like no different than like you know the old woman in Snow White offering Snow White this beautiful red apple that was
Mhm.
poison. And you don't see it that way, and it is, it's like the devil presents himself in the best way possible because he wants to convince you that he's the good guy.
Mhm.
The devil isn't going to come to you with the horns and the pitchfork. He's going to come to you dressed and in a soft gentle voice, and make you do what he wants you to do. So my oldest daughter is abused. I mean, I'm going to say it. Her husband is not a mentally normal person, and I've seen things. I've witnessed him doing things to her, and she doesn't care.
Mhm.
She just thinks this is normal because that's all she's known her whole life.
Right.
you know my youngest son is just completely brainwashed.
Mm.
He's being told that he's the golden child because he's
Mm.
the youngest, that he's the favorite child. And this is a very typical thing for a narcissist to do,
Mhm.
because I feel like if my son is the last person that he can have control over me with, so he's really going to tighten up those brainwashing skills with my youngest son now, because after my son is gone, who's he going to have?
Mhm.
Destroy me. you know so, and my son has a lot of things, like he's also transgender. There's a lot of things that he is dealing with internally, and this is so completely unfair to him.
Mhm. Mhm. That's so sad. They've had their childhoods completely destroyed.
Completely.
And
Completely.
that's time that they will never get back,
No.
and you will never get back as a normal family.
Never. I haven't seen my son on his birthday. I haven't had a birthday with him since he was 12. I haven't seen my kids on Mother's Day in years. I've been left alone on Mother's Day. I haven't had a Christmas with them in years. I haven't had, and they're all with him. And
Mhm.
he'll post everything on social media, how he's this great father and all the kids are with him, all the kids, all the grandkids, and I'm left by myself.
Mhm.
It doesn't even look normal. Like, here's a guy who had an affair on his wife, yet the kids are aligning with you.
Yeah,
Your
right.
daughters, your daughters should be the first people to lose respect for their fathers if they cheat. I don't care, like, I was a decent wife. I mean, I didn't run around. I was a very dedicated mother. All right, you don't like me anymore, you leave.
Mm.
But he completely created this horrific situation just so that he can look like everything he did was justifiable. Like, he turned me into this crazy woman. He turned me into the abusive parent. He probably is telling people that I had an affair on him. I don't
Mm.
even know. I mean, I can only imagine what he's told people about me. So my justice is my book. It's my truth. Nobody listened to me.
Mhm.
It's very difficult to speak when you are in a state of trauma,
Mhm.
because yes, I did look like I was crazy when I went to court. At one point I gained like 60 pounds, and I never was even that big. I just started eating myself to death almost. I mean, I was suicidal for years. I'd go into the courtroom frustrated and crying and pleading, like, nobody's listening to me. Nobody's listening to me. He's abusing these children. He is not feeding them. He's in a dirty house. I have statements. I have letters. Nobody cared. I could call him Ted Bundy and every name in the book, and he would literally sit there and just go, I don't know what she's talking about,
Mhm.
Judge. You know,
Right.
almost like you would feel sorry for him.
Mhm.
He's getting annihilated by his ex-wife. And yeah, because I'm the one who sees things for what it is. But in the court of law, when they look at them, that they're just sitting there quietly and letting you annihilate them and call them every name in the book, and you're hysterical crying because you have every reason to be hysterical, but it doesn't work in our advantage.
Mm-mm.
It did not work in my advantage at all. It actually made me look like the crazy ex-wife. And let me tell you something. self-control was a skill I had to really learn. And it's
Mhm.
very difficult when you're dealing with your children,
Mhm.
because I don't know how any parent, it's like almost watching your children drowning and you
Mhm.
can't save them. I mean, even the calmest person would become hysterical if they had to watch their children suffering and pleading for help.
Mhm.
But the court system just doesn't see it that way. It
No,
just,
the court system is out to make money and to make one parent the non-custodial parent.
uh-huh.
It's all kids for cash, essentially.
Well, I also think that because nothing drastic has happened in a year and a half, so let's just throw her a couple of days just to shut her up. But no one's going to get their hands dirty. No
Mhm.
one's
Mhm.
going to get their hands dirty unless there is sexual abuse or something. That if there's a 1% chance that I am a crazy mother, that I did, maybe 1% chance that I did chase my kids with a knife, that's where they go. They don't want that accountability. Okay.
Mhm.
And they try to keep things contained, so it's contained enough that no one gets in trouble. You give everybody a little bit of this, a little bit of that, so we can keep everybody quiet.
Mhm.
Let's just keep things the way they are, because the kids aren't being sexually abused and there's no bruises and there's no this, so let's just keep the kids with the abuser,
Mhm.
because we really don't know what the truth is. Okay, they really don't. So this is what's happening. So we have to like take out and extract what we can out of this situation. So there has to be a law against brainwashing,
Mhm.
because there is a system with brainwashing that I've seen, okay? Because I'm on all these sites and every single kid says the same thing, behaves the same way, and
Mhm.
spends years against their children. Now you get a bunch of kids in an orphanage that have been beaten by their parents, and the first thing they say is they want to go home.
Mhm.
Okay? It's
Mhm.
very rare for a child to want to distance themselves from a parent, even an abusive parent. Okay?
Mhm.
So we have that. That's a fact. The other fact is that what they're saying. What they're saying is so similar. There's an exact pattern with all of these kids, because I'm on these websites and they're saying that their kids are saying all these things. And I'm like, that's the same thing my kids would say. This is the same kid. This is the same thing that kid would say. There's a pattern here. Okay, there's a pattern. Okay,
Mhm.
and if we can send a man on the moon, and we could create drugs that cure cancer, I don't understand why we cannot see that brainwashing is killing society.
Mhm. Right. It really is.
Okay, we are creating a bunch of sociopathic children, and this cycle is never going to stop. You're turning people that may have grown up to be really good people, good kids, loving children, into sociopaths, heartless, emotionless, like kids that feel nothing. These kids are already angry. Now they're going to get more angry because they can't be with their loving parent. What do you think is going to happen? They're going to go to school. They're going to bully other kids. They're going to beat kids up. They're going to go to school with guns. They're going to go to school with knives. That anger and hate has to go somewhere.
Mhm. Right.
We have a hard enough time trying to keep people safe. We don't need added influences of people with narcissistic personality disorder brainwashing children to be disciples of this cult that they've created. It's ridiculous. And unfortunately, the system is not recognizing it, and they have to start, because this is like a pandemic.
It is. It really is.
Okay, this is a freaking pandemic, and it is a hate crime, and it's nothing more than hate and coercive control, and it
Mhm.
has to stop. Because one person decides to punish a parent for leaving the cult, the whole family has to suffer for years to come. It's not fair.
No, it's
It's
not.
not fair. It's really not fair.
And Dr. Mark Roseman had said that when this happens, 6 generations will be affected afterwards.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Without a doubt, I could see him trying to brainwash my grandchildren now. I
Mhm.
don't even know two of my grandchildren, you know? So, you think that's going to be like, my grandkids are going to grow up one day and say, how come I never met her? Well, because, she was crazy, like, and maybe they're going to find out I wasn't crazy.
Mhm.
So, it's a really, really sad. And I think that the only time, look, obviously, when you will become accountable, then
Mhm.
you're going to think twice before committing a crime. Yes, you're going to have your hardcore people, like there's murderers who think that they're above the law and they're going to get away and they're still going to attempt it. But I think that there will be a majority of parents that will think twice about brainwashing a kid, because now it's a crime. Now you can go to jail. Now you can have sanctions against you. You're going to be accountable, and
Mhm.
you're going to be exposed. So maybe, there's going to be a vast percentage of people that are going to think twice about trying to mess with their children to hurt another parent.
Oh, I agree, because that child also is missing out on that other half of the family, like your parents or aunts and uncles, that they're missing out on so much.
They are. It's very sad. Very sad. There's no reason for my son not to have been with me. I missed his graduation. I mean, their sweet 16 birthdays.
Mhm.
I missed everything,
Mm.
everything. Yet he has been there for everything, just to make himself look like this grandparent.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I can't hear you.
Oh, here we go. No, you know
Okay.
what happens? I think the internet goes in and out, and then that's what happens.
Ah.
Right. So yeah, like he has, he's turned his new wife into the mother of my children. Um, I recently, this isn't in my book because this just happened. So I've been divorced 11 years. I've been dealing with this for 11 years. Well, I've been dealing with this for a long time, but 11 years post divorce. So my son was starting, so my kids were always internally blocked with their phones. So that means that he's controlling uh, the fact that they cannot call me. So if they try to call me, it says the number you reach is not in service. Okay.
Mhm.
So my children would often reach out to me in Messenger or, in Instagram. So my son started to reach out to me on Instagram not too long ago. And we started to talk a little bit on Instagram, but he wouldn't come see me, but he would just talk to me. And I have a food business. So I would post things of food and I would see that he would like certain foods, like cupcakes or whatever. So he lives with his dad, not too far from where I have my business. So I literally would go there at night with a little box of food for my son and put it on the walkway. Never rang the doorbell. I never went during the day, really. Maybe a couple of times I did, but when they aren't home, I mean, I didn't go there to make a scene. I just literally dropped the box off and I left, and it would have my son's name on it. So not too long ago, I get a letter, registered mail from my ex-husband that said, you have dropped off packages for our son several times. You are not welcome here. If you continue to do so, you're going to be criminally charged, and any association of yours is going to be criminally charged. So what he's trying to say is that I can't even have a friend drop off a box or somebody that I know. So anybody that knows me or me is going to be criminally charged with trespassing on his property. So I have the fire company going to deliver my son's birthday cake.
Oh.
So a fire truck is going to deliver my son's birthday cake because it's his birthday tomorrow, but I'm not going to go tomorrow because I know he's probably going to deliberately keep my son out of the house all day because it's his birthday. So after a while, you kind of learn how
Mhm.
to play the game with them. And now I'm starting to be a step ahead. So I thought, let the birthday go by. Let my son think that I'm not coming. So everybody's guards down. My ex-husband's guards down. But Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, a humongous fire truck is showing up, and one of the firefighters in a fire suit is actually going there with a cake and balloons for my son.
I think that's really, I mean, I never would have thought to do that. I think that's a great idea.
You want to take the fire department to court? Go ahead. I wish he would. I would
Mhm.
love it. You know what a judge would say to him? Get out of my courtroom.
Mhm.
Get out of my courtroom.
I wish
So,
more judges would say that.
yeah, well, when you involve like a fire department, or you know what I mean, like things like that, then they kind of like, they're more, trust me, I wish, but if you want, I hope he tries to take me to court for bringing food to my son. Would you, these are just, he's running out of ideas to hurt me with.
Mhm.
And, even if I went to court and I said, judge, I just want to bring my son, well, he's going to say to me, you can't step on his property. And he has those rights. But a fireman has the right to do that and
Mhm.
deliver something. You know what I mean? Even though it
Right.
is coming from me. I mean, I I don't really care if he tries to sue me over that. I wish he would. I'd love to bring all the fire department in with me. They would think it was a joke,
Mhm. Mhm.
but whatever. So that's what I'm doing for my son. And my other daughter, my oldest daughter, I don't even know where she lives. She used to live near me, and now she's gone. She left, didn't even say goodbye to me, and she lives out of state, I think in South Carolina.
That's that's a shame to have you go through this. I'm glad you wrote the book, because you never know if they will pick up the book and start reading it and start remembering things.
I hope they do, because there is a lot of things in there. There is a lot of messages to my oldest daughter. I mean, look, there's a lot more details. I mean, we just have a limited time to talk about this, but there's so much more, and it is very organized, so you can actually see how somebody can do this, and,
Right.
when you're going through it, you're like, your head is spinning, and you're like like a funnel cloud of a tornado. And you think like you're crazy, you act like you're crazy, you look crazy,
Mhm.
but the book is very organized, and the thoughts are very organized. And when you break it down that way, you actually begin to see how they did it.
Mhm.
uh,
Mhm.
you know and it's not even so much that it's calculated, it's sociopathic,
Right.
because what they're capable of doing, I wouldn't even be able to do to somebody I didn't know. Like, my mind just would not even go there to try to hurt another human being, to the extent that the mother of your children, your childhood sweetheart, the woman you spent 28 years with of your life, we were teenagers together. We met on a 10-speed bike, and you are destroying me. And I couldn't do that to my worst enemy, like what he did to me. So, but putting it down on paper and in a book, it shows like the system, like systematically how he did all the things to break me down mentally. Then he used my children to further break me down. Then he used my children as allies, so then you get the whole picture, and you see
Mhm.
how, yeah, this is like pretty intense. Like,
Mhm.
I I mean, it's no wonder I lost everything,
Mhm.
right? It's not just about him saying, well, she was crazy. I had to take the kids from her because she was nuts. I mean, she was a terrible mother. She was a terrible wife. No, no, no. Now you have details of how this happened.
Right. And
So,
the red flags, which I'm glad you put in your book. The red.
oh, listen, there was so many red flags. So many red flags. There was major red flags. There was subtle red flags, but the red flags, all of the red flags I put in there. The other thing that's like a tall tale sign of a narcissistic person is that they have like addictions. Usually they're sexual deviants. I'm
Mhm.
learning. So there is a lot of infidelity with them, and there is a lot of like like sexual deviancies. Like,
Mhm.
there was some bad stuff that he did to me,
Mhm.
because I was 15 when I met him. I really didn't know,
Mhm.
like
You
today
were
I
too young.
I
Too
was
young.
very young. He was my first boyfriend, and I stayed with him like one of my first dates, I think when I was 45. So I really learned what normal sex is, to be honest with you, after I got away with from him. And there are some details of some very brutal things that he did to me.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, he even in the was watching porn with animals, like women having sex with animals. Yeah, and that was in the beginning of my marriage, and those were major red flags. Yeah, and this was in 1987. I don't even know where he would have gotten a porn. Came home and told me like this girl, she's a customer and she's really nerdy, and she told me we should watch this. And I'm thinking, okay, why would somebody even want to give him a porn?
Where are you? Where are you? Hey, can you hear me? Where are you? Where are you? Zoom, Zoom. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Are you there?